Welcome back to the Evolution of the Soul series. I'm Cheryl Arts from Willow Roots, and today I want to talk about my healing journey and my journey through a healing with concussion, a minor brain injury. But even if you haven't had a concussion, maybe there's some other healing that you are embarking on or you're healing from that I'm hoping that this story resonates with you, that you could take some things from this to help you on your journey. And so I'll just start by saying that, this all started, I turned 39. So I was in my 40th year. And so I kind of deemed it the year of Cheryl. And I was really excited about that. I wanted it to be an incredible year. I wanted to say yes to everything. I wanted to travel and do a lot of incredible things. And so this was in November, this was in 2015. So 10 years ago. And that all kind of came to an abrupt end. So I was about 4 or 5 months into this year of Cheryl, and I hit my head on the ice. I was playing ringette. So again, something I'd said yes to. I hadn't played since I was, 11 or 12, 13 maybe. I can't remember, but I felt, very honored that I was asked to play on this team. And my very first game fell backwards and hit my head. And it wasn't really that hard of a hit, but I didn't feel well. And I kind of chalked it up to being out of shape and that sensation of wanting to throw up. I thought it was because, I was working really hard and skating hard. And so the next morning I woke up and felt about the same. I didn't feel right. And to give you a kind of a date, which those of us in the spiritual community will appreciate, the accident happened on November 1st. So a very spiritual day. It's deemed the Day of the Dead, but the veil is very thin. So a very interesting date for me anyways. So I had to take my daughter to an early hockey practice. I think it was at 7 a.m. And I was talking to another mom about, what was kind of going on with my body. And she said, you really should get it checked out. You should go to the hospital. So I proceeded to go to emergency and had it checked out. They confirmed that I had a concussion. And the advice that I was given at that point was to just keep doing what I was doing. And I was really nauseous. I felt very sick to my stomach. And so I said, well, do I go back to work? Like how to? And the doctor kind of annoyingly said, well, I'll write you a day off, a note for a day off, which I didn't really need. But so I took that. I took a day off. Actually, I ended up taking 2 or 3 days because I felt so nauseous. I felt like I was going to throw up when I did things. And so I, took her advice, kept doing what I was trying to do. So I went back to work. And I remember I worked in the defense industry and we had the US government, the customer was there, we had customer meetings, so I had to be dressed up. I was wearing heels and, we were looking at some of the inventory, some of the vehicles. And I remember as they passed by, they moved by me, then all of a sudden I had to like grasp the mirror, grasp the side of the vehicle to not fall over. So my balance was off. So I was like, wow, that's interesting. And, this was getting to be Thursday, kind of closer to the end of the week. And we were supposed to be leaving for Jamaica on Sunday. And I'd asked the doctor if it was okay to fly. She said, yep, if you're feeling good, go. And so by the end of the weekend, like by that time, I was feeling great. So we flew to Jamaica, had a really incredible week. And the only time I had a symptom was when I was on the treadmill. I got on the treadmill, it was a rainy day, and started walking. And I was walking a little too fast, and my head started to feel like there was this pressure in my head. And I was like, okay, so we'll just slow it down. And then it was fine until we flew home. And the pressure in the plane, flying home, and then driving home, it was 9 o'clock at night. So it was dark out. So the lights on the freeway, and I was trying to text, because we had 3 kids. I was trying to text my mom and pick up kids and different things like that. And that started a massive migraine that didn't leave me for months. Really, I mean, I started to live with that daily. And so from there, it was a bit of a yo-yo. I was trying to work. So I would work for, a week and then go see the doctor. And they're like, hey, you know what, take a week off. So I take a week off, or then I would work every other day. and that was really hard because the days off, I just spent them in bed. I wasn't very productive. I was basically recovering from the day before. And so this continues. So that was November, December. And then January, I got in line with a physiotherapist or a physio clinic called New Physio in London, Ontario, Canada, that specialized in brain injury. And so I went and saw them, and they tested me again, and they're like, yes, you're dealing with this. And then they told me something that I'd never heard before. They talked about this Parkwood Points program. So Parkwood's a hospital in London. They've done lots of great research towards brain injury, lots of good support and programs. So they had this program. It's kind of like Weight Watchers, where you got so many points a day, but instead of eating, it was what activity you did. So every activity had a point. And they said, okay, we're going to give you 10 points to start. And so when I was looking at what that entailed, like what I was able to do with 10 points was basically get up, eat my breakfast, shower, get ready for work, and drive to work. So I only had enough points to get me till 8 a.m. And that was my day. If I went over that, it was going to put me in symptom mode. And so, the real beauty of that, and perhaps if you're dealing with a brain injury, I believe they have it online, but it was a really great program. But the premise of it was we need to do some activity. We can't just go into a darkened room and not do anything, but you would get to a point where, if you think of like a stoplight, green, yellow, and red, where green, you feel good, yellow, you're pushing yourself, right? But you want to get to kind of almost the threshold, but we never want to get into the red zone, right? The red zone is where, we're done. You're done and you're out for the count. And the only thing, for me, when I got to that point, was sleep. Darkened room, sleep. I need a day of sleep, and then I could come back to it. And so you kind of wanted to get yourself just, and so, as you progress, 10, if you did 10 points for a period of time, then you can move up to 12 or 15 or 20. And so that was a really great program. But with that, I realized, I can't work anymore. And I called my boss and said, look, I need to take time off. I need to do this healing work. And that's the first time I've ever been on disability. I remember looking at my benefits program years ago when I got hired, and I skipped through that because I'm like, oh, I'm never going to need that. But I found myself in that space, and that was, that's a whole other video dealing with disability and disability insurance, because that's not easy to navigate. And, for me, what I realized within that, advocating for myself with a brain injury is really hard through that process. But it also keeps you sick, because you have to continue to tell these people that, yes, I have this, and you're telling the universe that you are sick. I am sick, I am sick, which of course you are, but it's really kind of affirming that and not allowing you to move forward in your healing. And so from there, I would try anything. I had this really internal drive to heal. And so that's one of the most important things in this process, is that you want to get better. You can believe that you can be better. And, so I was doing massage. So I had, neck problems. So massage, chiropractic, obviously physio. So I would go to my physio sessions, but also doing physio at home. I went to a special optometrist. So I went to my normal optometrist. They said my eyes were fine. There's a special optometrist, and if you're in Southwestern Ontario, Dr. Lethrin, Cheryl Lethrin, in London, Ontario. So she tested my eyes, but tested my perception. And she saw that I was seeing things off by a certain degree. And so, it was such a weird thing, because I know I would be sitting in the passenger seat with my husband, and he'd be driving, and I'd be freaking out because I kept thinking he was going to hit the guardrails, or that he was going to hit oncoming traffic. Everything was off. And so she gave me prism glasses, and we taped, which, for anyone who's done that, that takes a bit of, you're the fear of rejection, which I've talked about, not caring what you look like. And so it helped so much when I put the tape on. It was like my brain just went, took a sigh. So I did that. I wore hats. So if you wore a hat, you took away a lot of perception. We don't realize how much we process. So if you take away from here, it really helped my brain come down. and I wore I had old people glasses. So I had my own glasses. I had my prism glasses, but then I had to put sunglasses over top. So I was using that. I was using special earplugs, noise canceling earbuds, and that was helpful too. I did some medications. I can't remember. I think they were something like neuroblockers. I can't remember. They were helpful, but they caused so many other side effects. And so it just was a non-starter for me. And one of the side effects was causing dementia, like really looking at the labels for that. And I remember filling that prescription and about to take it, and some email came to me from I don't even know where, but it was basically talking about this specific medication and the effects that it had. And I was like, that's a sign, like, I can't take it. Um, I started to do yoga, walking every day, essential oil. So peppermint oil is great for me. My biggest symptom was migraines. And so putting on peppermint oil to help decrease that. I was in constant flight or flight. So, there's this protection that happens with our body. And I remember walking through the woods and a squirrel would go through the leaves and I'd just jump. Like it was the craziest thing. And so someone suggested to me, I think it was my massage therapist, had me book in with a reflexologist. And I remember that session because I think I fell asleep, and I went home and I slept. But she was able to drop and they can do so many other wonderful things, but was able to shift my nervous system. Excuse me. Help like just de-escalate the whole body, which was really powerful. Acupuncture. I still see my acupuncturist this day. So you may say, oh, my physiotherapist does acupuncture or my massage therapist. Like, no, you need to go see a real acupuncturist, somebody who's trained, somebody who can, if they're just treating the symptoms as you say it, it's great. But when they test they'll do your blood, they'll do your pulse. Right. And within that, so I can tell him like dot, 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 but then the pulse tells him a little differently. Maybe it tells you that the liver's overloaded or some other piece. So the acupuncture was really, really powerful. I got introduced to Louise Hay, so I started introducing affirmations. Affirmations were really powerful. I know when my headache would start, I would say, my mind is at ease, I am at peace. My mind is at ease, I am at peace. And that seemed to help me drop it from a 9 to about 5. I couldn't get rid of it fully, but if you know Louise Hay's story, she healed herself from cervical cancer. So very powerful story. But so her teachings helped a lot. Somebody brought it to my attention, I think when I went to the Parkwood program. So they have a program that you could come in person. I think it's all not online now, but said to be able to grieve. Because I know I just wanted that old person back. I wanted the Cheryl Arts that existed October 31st of 2015. I wanted her life back. I wanted all of that back. And I needed to grieve the loss of that. The loss of my job, the loss of the ability to be a parent, the loss of social interactions, the loss of my sports, the loss of so many things. And so that permission to grieve was really, really important. And so I'm really grateful for that. And, I was talking about in one of my first videos, The Dark Night of the Soul, going into a deep depression. So regardless of what you're healing from, if it's been such a really difficult challenge, depression is, a possibility that happens. And so I started to see a counselor, which was really effective. And she started to get me on some gratitude work. And I'll talk about this in another video because I think this is really important because I didn't believe I had anything to be grateful for. But one of the big shifts that happened is when then I brought gratitude in, and I was actually grateful for what happened to me, my brain injury, that everything started to shift. So gratitude. And in that video, that first video, Dark Night of the Soul as well, if you haven't watched it, you might be good to watch it, is asking why this happened. Why this happened to me? Why am I going through this? Why this process? What does this have to teach me? And I know for me, deep down in my soul, I had to leave my job. And so that was part of the process. So in amongst this too, I'm trying to, function, trying to have a relationship with my husband and, try to do normal things. And so we had to get very creative in how we did things. And so for my 40th birthday, my husband actually bought a canoe. And I thought, that's great. I can, I lost all my sports that I played a lot of baseball, played a lot of volleyball. And so, it was a big shift now to be doing yoga and to, meditating and different things like that. But the canoeing, I thought, okay, it's quiet, it's in nature. And so we, really kind of shifted to that. And it's been I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for the years I got to compete, but my mind and body, it just wasn't for me anymore. And so we also had to get creative in terms of how we had dates. And unfortunately for us, we had kind of a pull trailer that had a kitchen in it. So we would have some dates there. Couldn't go to a restaurant, so we'd order food in, and the kids were just in the house, so we could go in there and have some space just to have time for him and I to have kind of a date. And so we had to get very creative with that. And I've shared this in a couple different videos. One of the biggest shifts, so again, I was open to anything. So being open to people's ideas. So a lot of people will have ideas, a lot of people have found really cool things. Take what resonates with you. For me, the biggest shift that had an impact for me was energy healing. And it's likely that's because that's the path I was meant to take. I was meant to learn it and start offering it. And so, I started with that healing circle and seeing a huge jump in my healing. And one of the very first sessions I had on my own, a one-on-one session, I actually went into past lives and had to heal some past lives where I'd had brain injuries. So I'd had 2 or 3 brain injuries. One that I can remember was when I was a soldier in some type of war. It seemed to be, I don't know, maybe more in an Asian country, I'm not sure, but I harmed a child. I believe I killed a child either accidentally or on purpose during this war. And the mother came after me and attacked me with a sword in the head. And so I had this energy of this brain injury from years and years and years ago, this past life. And so healing that, brought another level to the healing, which was really, really powerful. And so, there was many, many steps in my healing, and one of them was going to a Sekhmet retreat. And so the work that I do in alchemical healing is very much tied to the Egyptian pantheon. And Sekhmet is a lioness goddess, and Nikki Scully, who brought alchemical healing to the world, wrote the book Sekhmet, and it's a series of journeys, and it was a weekend retreat. So I was lucky enough to meet her and go into this process. And it's really a shamanic death and rebirth process, and very, very powerful. So I went up to Gravenhurst for this weekend of healing, and we were closing in. It was almost Sunday. It was like the last day. We were, eating a beautiful breakfast. And then if you understand the energy healing world, it started to be an energy healing crisis within me. I could feel like something was going on and I needed to do some healing. And so luckily I was surrounded by some really beautiful healers. So 2 of them were working on me. People had left the breakfast table. They were now doing yoga and oming, doing these beautiful ceremonies right behind us. And in that moment, I knew I felt like I was going to throw up, but I had to purge it. So not only energetically purge it, I had to physically purge what was coming up. And because of the environment I was in, I was like, nope, not doing it. I'm not puking here. So I stuffed it all in and held it in my body. And so that kind of, stayed with me. And about 6 months later, I journeyed to Egypt. And so that was very much, I'll be talking about that in a different video about Egypt, because such a powerful place of transformation. And I never really had wanted to go to Egypt. It wasn't one of those desires. Many people, want to go, it's on their bucket list or different things like that. I never really wanted to go, but I was very drawn to it. I felt like, spirit was really like pulling me from the front and pushing me from behind. And I was like, okay, I will go. And at the time I was on disability, I was on long-term disability, and it was coming to an end. And the insurance companies do not like you being, especially, so it's a fight to get from short term to long term, and then from that 2 year span of long term, they don't like you to go any further because most people don't come out of that, and they stay, and so they don't want to pay out. And so, a month before I was going to Egypt, the insurance company sent me to their doctors and tested me in a way I'd never been tested before. Like they were testing my reflexes, which were never a problem, and did this quick assessment and we're like, yep, you're good to go back to work. And I was like, what is happening? Like I was still very symptomatic. I was not capable of work, and meanwhile, like leaving for Egypt very soon. And so I had to go through this process. If I wanted to stay on disability, I basically had to go and prove that I was sick. And I had to book appointments with physiotherapists and all of these different people to prove. And I had to make a decision of what I was going to do. And I didn't have the energy to do that. I mean, meanwhile, I'm sick, right? So trying to do that, trying to navigate this, and I was going to be in Egypt for 3 weeks, and they gave me a timeline like by the end of March, we need to, this is your deadline. And I was going basically for the whole month of March. So I went into Egypt with that space. So I went into Egypt very symptomatic. And one of the first things that we did in Egypt, of course, we started at Sphinx, and then we went to Saqqara. And Saqqara has these beautiful chapels. And I felt like I was talking into the ethers, like that I had a megaphone to the universe. And one of the things they asked us to do was to speak what we were willing to let go of, speak what we were willing to sacrifice for what we want to manifest. And I said, I want to let go of disability. I want to let go of fear. I want to let go of this illness in my body. And I want to walk forward in my path. I want to heal. I want to walk forward in my path. And so I spoke that at the very beginning of the Egypt journey. And it's about a 2 week journey that we're there. And about halfway through, we ended up in Edfu. And if you know about Edfu, Edfu is a temple of Horus, but it's said to be on top of Set's temple. And so Set and Horus had battled for a number of years. And that's a whole other story about that mythology. So when I stepped on the grounds of that temple, I could feel the push and pull. I could feel like that disability piece and like to let go of the concussion, but then that the fear holding on to it of like, what happens next? How do I feed my family? So this battle. And so for you, if you're in this energy, you can understand what I'm talking about. Fear can hold us back from so many things. And I think fear was kind of at the center of this piece. And so there was a battle kind of happening within my body. And I then started to make a scene, which we were told not to there. Even though these temples are incredible healing spaces, they don't really encourage doing that in the open. Or guards need to be paid to allow that to happen. And so I was starting to make a scene, and so the whole group gathered around me, and I got escorted back to the boat, and I just laid face down. So we were on a beautiful dahabeah on the Nile, and I couldn't go anywhere. I had to lay face down on the boat, and I laid there, I don't know, for hours. I can't even remember. I don't even know. Like I couldn't move until I was like, yep, I have to go, and I'm gonna throw up. And so going back to that Sekhmet retreat, I couldn't hold it in any longer. It had to happen. I had to purge. And so it was about 48 hours of purging. Just, throwing up for 24 hours or longer, 2 days. And until my teacher came in, and there was just one more missing piece. So we did a little bit of energy work. There was a missing piece. And once that was resolved, I felt like it's done. I am healed. And so I just laid down, had a nap, and, there was such a shift that happened. And leaving Egypt, I knew I was healed, even though I felt I still had symptoms. I knew it was done. And I'll just go back to the purging. So after a couple days of, not being able to really leave my cabin, I finally got enough energy to call my husband. And so I called him. I was talking to him, and I, apologized for not connecting sooner. And I come to find out that he was actually throwing up at the exact same moment for those 2 days. And so he was purging the illness as well. He was purging the me that I had become. He was purging the energy around it. So we were both purging at the same time, which I thought was very powerful. And it's something that I will speak about in another video, because people can hold us in trauma. They can hold us into what they believe we are. And so we'll talk about that at another time. And so it was about 8 weeks of processing and integrating after Egypt that I felt 100% healed. We went to an amusement park with my kids, and the last time we went, I was really sick, so I couldn't really participate. But this time I was going on the roller coasters, I was watching concerts, the lights, the sound, nothing bothered me anymore. I was 100% healed. I remember driving down the road shortly after feeling healed and being able to turn the radio on in my vehicle to listen. And I just, like, tears just streamed down my face because I hadn't been able to listen to the radio for 2.5 years. Super, super powerful. The last little piece I had with it was a diet change. I changed my diet. I removed wheat and dairy for a period of time. And within, I would say, 24 hours, maybe 48 hours of removing those components from my diet, my migraine stopped. No more migraines, all gone. And now since that time, so that was, that was in 2018. And so since that time, I'm able to eat wheat and dairy again. It doesn't really, I mean, I limit what I intake. So I just want to offer all of those things. And also within that space of healing through my concussion, I was asking why. And so, I was talking about that in the Dark Night of the Soul video. How does this illness serve me in some way? What is the reason? One of the reasons I know for me was rest. I needed rest. I had 3 young children who were all active in sports. I was very active in sports. I coached the sports that I played in. I was working at a defense industry. I was doing the book work for my husband. I was trying to get my network marketing company up and running. So there was so much going on. And I think about it now and I was like, how did I do all of that? How did I manage that? How did I do that? So I knew that this illness served me. It was getting me to rest. It was getting me to make a shift. It was getting me to move on and forward with my path, and really finding it and stepping into it. And so really understanding how our illnesses serve us in certain ways. Maybe, there's some other pieces there for you. So asking those questions. And I want to speak to just a little piece. I've met other people who have come to me who've been in a concussion or some other pieces where they've been told by their doctors, there's no cure. This will be the rest of your life. You will never get better. And I would just speak to one particular person I saw that had a brain injury. They're 5 years in, and they're like, "Yeah, there's no hope for you," but hadn't explored more holistic ways of being. And so I did some energy healing with them, and there was progress. And, so there's more healing that can happen. So please don't allow that to deter you. We're all on a certain path. If it's meant to be, then that's what will happen. But, having that drive to find ways to heal your body is so, so important, and not losing hope. And that's, energy healing is really powerful. And the modality that I use, all chemical healing, really helps us get to the root. We can ask to get to the root of what's underneath this, all of these symptoms, or what is happening, and dealing with the why of it. Anything, cancer, arthritis, diabetes, there's reasons for it. There was emotion. It was probably in your energy field And it was talking to you, and then it started to manifest in the body. And I know for me, I needed to leave my job, leave my job. I was being told, I wasn't listening. I was scared. I wasn't listening, wasn't listening. And then it had to manifest into the body for me to really pay attention. And so we need to be paying attention to that. And we need to understand the energy behind dis-ease or discomfort or what is happening. So that's very, very, very important. And um, so I'm hoping this video is helpful for those with brain injuries or any other things you're dealing with. You know, if you feel called to reach out to me, please email me or contact me and contact me through my website at willowroots.net. And I want to say too, for anyone that, you know, maybe if it's a brand new brain injury or somebody, you know, has a concussion, getting the energy away from the brain is great. And so I've worked with people who have, you know, some like, you know, symptoms right off the hop, but getting the energy off the brain. So going to see any type of energy healer can help you do that to make room for the healing, right? Because it is swelling in the brain. And so we need to move the energy off the brain. And so that's what I can offer you as immediate help. And I'm hoping through these videos that I continue to do that I will be giving you still more information and more ideas about how I can help you on your healing journey or maybe your path to your purpose. And so I'm very grateful. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you in the next video.